Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the Irish Hotspur. This is going to be kind of a quick little video having to do with kind of a bit of a squad sort of decision when we come up against Leicester City this coming Saturday with the likes of Romero actually out with a red card. Of course, he picked up that red card in our most recent game against Man City. He's only going to be out for one game. No alarm here, everybody. Just only out for one game, and then he will be back with us. But who do you play at right-sided center back? I've noticed it's a bit of kind of a question at the moment for some people. Do you continue with Emerson Royale while he's in fabulous form? Do you throw in Davinson Sanchez? Do you throw in Tanganga? Maybe there's some other sort of combination you can go for, perhaps even a formation change. Do let me know down in the comments, everybody, because this is going to be my solution basically from what maybe we could be seeing from Antonio Conte this coming Saturday against Leicester at right-sided center back. Again, a pretty short video, so everybody do leave your comments down below as to what you think should be the solution with no Romero being an option this coming Saturday. I'm going to actually just come out and right away and just say no to Emerson as a right-sided center back. Believe me, I love defending Emerson. I'm a big fan of his, but I just don't think that this is a necessary nor really a decision that should be done, just because it's only one game with Romero being out. And I just feel like it's a bit too much pressure maybe on Emerson. It's also something that maybe Spurs have done a bit too much in the past, in my opinion, where we have kind of converted players to other positions in order to kind of cover up for other players' deficiencies or other players' kind of usefulness, or lack of usefulness, really. And that's kind of the case with Sanchez and Tanganga. Like, what does it really say about them, Sanchez and Tanganga, if you're going to play Emerson ahead of them? Like, there's no point in really having them around in the first place. We should have sold them in January, or should have found a way to get rid of either one of them in January if we are going to play Emerson ahead of them. So that's kind of my thinking on it in the first place, is that these guys, Tanganga and Sanchez in particular, they're paid as center backs to be in this team. So if they're going to play, Emerson ahead of them, who's, already kind of learning his trade, kind of getting into a groove now as a right wing back, it would seem silly sort of to take him out of that groove, in my opinion. He is doing quite well at this moment in time as a right wing back. Let's let him stay there at right wing back. Let's let him, kind of continue that groove, continue that bit of confidence. Don't let him think about anything else. Don't let him or bother him with that sort of kind of task or those sort of duties, because it does seem completely unnecessary when you already have other center backs that should be able to be in there to do the job. And if they can't do the job, I don't really know what they're doing here, really, in the first place. And also, just in my opinion, I feel like defending and reading the game as a center back is very different from defending as a fullback and a wingback, especially when it comes to this back three. I think in possession, it's also very different as well. Whereas, like, as a right sided center back in possession, you are asked to carry the ball out a bit more, but you also need to be able to switch play if need be. You need to be able to kind of ping a pass all the way over to Perisic or be able to find Sonny. And, I feel like Emerson could do that, but is he really, fully capable of it? And is that really in his skill set? Not really. It doesn't even need to be in his skill set. Not really, because he is more, of a driving, powerful kind of athletic wingback that is able to get up and down and be more defensive. And I think that's more necessary of, a center back, to be able to be a bit more confident on the ball, to have those sort of skills in possession. And I'm not sure if really Emerson does have those skills in possession. Believe me, I'll get onto it later. Like, I don't think Sanchez or really Tanganga have it either. But like I said, I just don't think it'd be a natural sort of switch for him being able to do it from a defensive standpoint, like being able to read the game. I think as a wingback or as a fullback is probably very different from reading it as a right-sided center back in this sort of system. But also just think in possession, I imagine it's very, very different. And so I just don't want to have to, put Emerson in that sort of position for just one game and then take him out of it. Just seems completely unnecessary. And so while I see kind of the logic behind, putting Emerson, in this sort of position at right-sided center back, I think it's a bit of an unnecessary pressure on Emerson. And Spurs, I feel like, have done this in the past instead of just selling the players that they maybe have deemed useless. And this would be the case of, Tanganga and Sanchez. Like, if we truly believe that Emerson should play at right-sided center back, then obviously we don't really rate Sanchez or Tanganga. I know a lot of us maybe on this channel don't really, but if that really is the case, that we're playing Emerson ahead of them, I just don't really think then that they should be around at this football club. And clearly, then we're just sort of converting other players to other positions to make up for the deficiencies and the lack of usefulness of other players in the squad, i.e., kind of Tanganga and Sanchez in this case. So, like I said before, I think you're putting too much pressure on Emerson. And then it's also just something that Spurs have been way too guilty of in the past, covering up for other players' deficiencies deficiencies instead of just, selling the players that they obviously don't like anymore and then bringing in a player that can actually play that position, being the right sided center back position. Hopefully that all made sense. Another kind of thing about this is kind of just my problem with playing Sanchez in general at the right sided center back position. I think he is the worst center back on the ball and in possession at this club at the moment. I don't think that, the right-sided center back position allows you to be as poor as he is in possession. In fact, I actually feel like I'd rather have him be in the center because in the center, he can either turn to, you can turn to either side to be able to play. He can also just play it into Højbjerg or Bentancur if need be. He can play backwards easily. He has a lot of space. He's not going to be trapped. He's not going to, if he is put under pressure, he doesn't really have, I think, as many, moments where he's going to have to panic or anything and make, kind of a quick decision. I just feel like Sanchez, as a right-sided center back, he's just too poor in possession to be able to do it. He's really bad at carrying the ball with any sort of confidence. He's really bad at being able to switch play if he needs to get out of pressure. He's really bad in kind of just the tight areas. I just don't really rate him, honestly, in that right-sided center back position. In fact, I think he did a lot better playing through the center when he was actually up against the likes of Preston. So if I were even to play Sanchez in this game, I think I'd sooner play him through the middle. And that mostly just has to do with the fact that I think he is that poor in possession. And I think the right sided center back position demands a lot from you in possession. And we see how good Romero is in it. If we put Sanchez in there, I think we'll see a lot of problems down that right hand side with how little we're able to get up the pitch. We all know he also as well has a clanger in him and has his sort of ice skates, kind of moments. One of those did come at home last time against the likes of Leicester City. So if you did kind of want to maybe look at the fact that he had a bit of a howler and maybe a bit of a poor defensive display last time he played against Leicester City, maybe not risk it again in this one. And our defending really was truly awful, I remember, on that day. So I'm just don't really feel like, playing, a similar combination of players again. The only positive to Sanchez really, I think, is his aerial ability, and he seems to be way better away from his own penalty area. So if you did want to play him, you do have the benefit of the fact that he is pretty good from set pieces. And he also seems to, if the ball's kind of bumbling around in the opponent's box, he seems to be quite useful in those scenarios, actually. He's quite good. But last but not least, he did deny a move also away this last January, even though he doesn't even play very much at all at this football club, which is, I think, then in turn made it even more difficult for us to have brought in a center back this last January. So just me personally, I have a bit of gripe with the guy. I have a bit of kind of, I'm just a little angry with him, just a little upset with him because in order for us, I think, to have made it a lot easier or even, had less of an excuse to bring in a center back this January, Sanchez gave, maybe the club more of an excuse, you could say, because we needed to sell one of the players that wasn't taking up a homegrown spot or any of the players that was taking up one of those kind of English homegrown spots. And he does take up one of those foreign spots in the squad. And we could have maybe brought in a Zabarnyi or someone like that maybe a bit sooner had we been able to get rid of someone like Sanchez. But Sanchez denied apparently some moves away this January because he's apparently very happy to be here at the club at this moment in time, despite not really playing any minutes at all, which I think just sort of makes me question his motivation as a footballer, just kind of makes me question sort of his motivation to really earn any playing time or any minutes. Seems quite happy actually to be sitting on the bench. And so I don't know, like it's just Sanchez in general is a bit of a lot of things to maybe address at once, let's say. So I'm just gonna say like not really gonna go for him either at right sided center back. For me, too, Tanganga, I just don't think is really good enough when it comes to Tanganga at the moment. He just doesn't really look like he's, good enough to play against like Premier League, sort of level opponents for Spurs. That's not really his fault entirely, though. I do feel like that's the fault of the homegrown system and also how Spurs have kind of taken advantage of some of their own like homegrown produced players from this club and from this academy. They seem to kind of keep them hostage here in order to just kind of make up the numbers when it comes to the squad submissions for Champions League and for the Premier League and all that sort of stuff. So I feel like Tanganga has been a victim of just kind of being treated as a bit of a number in the squad instead of being able to go out and develop and, tap into that talent and tap into that potential that we all know is there in him. So I'm a bit frustrated to see that. I feel like his sort of potential and his sort of talent has sort of waned and maybe has gone away a little bit due to the fact that he's not been able to play very very much. And I think it's just because he's been kept around to make up the numbers for the homegrown. When I do kind of watch him play, though, I do feel like he fouls way too much, and he even seems to need to foul in order to make a tackle. And I feel like that's a problem where if you need to foul somebody basically in order to make a tackle, feels like maybe you start to kind of lose some of that real kind of art to defending, let's say. He also seems to struggle in the air when defending or even attacking set pieces. So compared to someone like Sanchez or maybe other center backs, doesn't really have that threat in the air that we could sometimes need with the likes of Gianni Vio and everything from set pieces. So it's kind of a big no for me for Tanganga. And he's really not that great in possession either. He's actually probably just as good as Sanchez, maybe slightly better. And I feel like that's also kind of a huge deficiency of his because he's not really one of the tallest or one of the most commanding of center backs, kind of in the aerial sense or just really in like the physical sense. I think Tanganga, believe me, he can handle himself physically, but he's not really a tall or imposing center back. And he's very mobile, he's very quick, he's very agile. But it feels like, then if he would had like really good ability on the ball, let's say he was really technical and great in possession, if he then had that, I feel like you would sort of tolerate maybe the fact that he wasn't always the best defender, or maybe he was a bit clumsy or a bit too physical, because if he made up for that with being really good in possession and really helping us out in that sort of area, I feel like he would be getting a lot of playing time. But the fact that he's not really much better than Sanchez in possession, and he seems to really struggle to make any sort of tackle without fouling at the moment, he's just really losing any sort of reason to pick him at this moment in time. So what's the solution, everybody? How do I fix this problem? Or at least what would I would sort of maybe think to do in this situation? Maybe what Conte might be thinking to do is I would actually just stick with Davies at left-sided center back. I'd stick with the likes of Dyer in there too, and I'd actually throw in Longley. So that means I'd go Davies at left-sided center back, Longley through the middle as the center back, and then Dyer as the right-sided center back. Davies has been playing well of recent, and I feel like doesn't make those individual mistakes or errors that others seem to make. So I feel like he just keeps the spot automatically. Longley is better than the rest of our center backs, I think, in possession in general, and has also been, quite useful for us when it comes to the set pieces. He's able to win the flick-ons and just seems to be useful when we are kind of in the attacking set pieces as well as defending them. Dyer is far more capable, I think, of also handling the demands that I was talking about when it comes to being in possession and with the ball at your feet at the right-sided center back position. I kind of spoke about earlier how I don't have confidence in Sanchez in possession. I don't have confidence in Tanganga in possession, or not really even Emerson to a degree in possession at right-sided center back. Whereas I do actually think, despite times where he does make ridiculous mistakes and ridiculous errors with the ball, I do feel like Dyer is probably, of the ones we have to choose from at this moment, maybe with Romero being out, probably the best choice of any of the players that could handle the demands of the right-sided center back position for anybody being in possession. So like I said, even though it's not a great choice to make, I do feel like Dyer will handle the responsibilities of maybe developing the play from that right-sided center back possession in possession more so than the likes of Sanchez or Tanganga or even Emerson really would. And I feel like Dyer has that confidence from time to time going forward, and he can also whip in across. We've seen before when he's actually been pushed out there. I think it was that Bournemouth game. He had no problem with like whipping in some crosses from time to time as well. So I feel like for one game and one game alone, he could actually maybe do a job out there. He'll be forced to be proactive on the ball as well instead of being slow on the ball like he is on the middle. I feel like when he's in the middle, he kind of gets a bit sort of lazy or just a bit too slow and kind of just seems to be too methodical and taking his time. Whereas when he's out on the right, he's going to have to push the ball forward. He's going to have to be a whole lot more proactive, which I think is a good thing, actually. And since Dyer is a center back, I do feel like he'll just have a far better understanding and far more familiar, I think, understanding of how, he reads the game defensively, how he sees the game defensively from that sort of center back position than Emerson would. I think Emerson, it would be a bit sort of foreign to him. It will be a bit sort of kind of strange to him, to the way he reads the game, the way he sees the game, defending it from that sort of right-sided center back position instead of that right wing back position. Whereas I feel like Dyer, it's a smoother transition just for one game for him going from that center back position to that right-sided center back position. I think he'll read the game a bit easier. I think it's just a bit more familiar, and it'll be a smoother transition. But that's my sort of explanation on this one, everybody. Actually went a bit longer than I expected just because I am a bit of a blabbermouth. But but I am going to make kind of maybe more sort of short pre-recorded videos from time to time. Everybody want to boost those up on the channel. So let's try to get this one, please, please, please. Let's try to get this one to 75 likes if we can. Would love to get it to 100 if we can, but let's try to get it to 75 likes if we can. And who do you play at right wing back versus Leicester City and in the Champions League versus AC Milan? If we can get to 75 likes, I will try to put that video out as soon as we can. And it is something I'm just planning on doing anyways, is who do you feel like playing at right wing back, versus the likes of Leicester City? And then also the following game against AC Milan in the big Champions League. Everybody hit that like button on your way out, and I will be seeing ya. Come on, you Spurs, and in Conte I trust.